Chapter 17, Growing Pressure. Santini lay in bed at night in his Mission District apartment worrying. How would HSI headquarters react to the premature shutdown of the auto theft sting? The operation had now succeeded in seizing more than 20 vehicles, but he had hoped for more. His team had taken numerous guns from the gang, but he also knew they could likely get new ones. He had two main informants to manage now, and Casper was likely suspected as a rat by the gang. The FBI was constantly breathing down his neck. The murder rate in the city was on the rise, while arrests for homicides were down. Had he bitten off more than he could chew? The old fear of failure to follow in his father's footsteps that way churned his gut. Unable to fall asleep, he listened to the wind and rain pelting the apartment's window panes. El Nino, the periodic Pacific weather machine, was deluging the California coast again, as it did every few years. In the city, water overflowed every pothole and planter. It gushed down storm drains in torrents, flushing away the stench from vagrants who pissed and defecated openly in San Francisco's parks and alleys. He drifted into half sleep, the sound of downpouring rain infiltrating his dreams with shards of memory from his time as a border patrol agent. It was 6 years ago, another El Nino year. The heavy rains hit Southern California hard. More than once, he gave high-speed pursuit to coyote vehicles laden with human cargo and watched them crash to a stop, the passengers scrambling out and sprinting away into the darkened landscape in every direction. The sheer desperation of the border jumpers to get into the States was palpable. If they could just get past the border zone, their chances of finding safe haven with family members or fellow countrymen in some town or city in America where a person could find work that paid decently in US dollars would dramatically improve. The sprint across the border was a make it or break it moment. The speediest among them often got away. All Santini saw of them was their backsides as they vanished into the nighttime landscape, leaving him and his partners to corral the ones who they could snag and hold in place until backup arrived. The detainees were loaded into vans and taken to a newly formed immigration courts where they were scanned biometrically and checked for criminal records or outstanding warrants. One night alone on patrol, driving in a Ford Bronco in a remote area of the hills across the border from Tijuana, Santini received a call over the radio from patrol spotters equipped with night vision goggles. They reported a group of 5 people sneaking across the line in Santini's vicinity and directed him to pursue on foot. He parked the truck and made his way toward the suspects in the dark. When he got close enough, he flipped on his spotlight. This was the moment of truth he had been through dozens of times before. When the light came on and the faces of the 100 were revealed, their eyes lit up by the flashlight's beam. Was it a family? A father and a mother with 6 kids in tow? At first, they complied and marched ahead of him to the back of the truck. Then the situation began to unravel. The 5 men moved around to the opposite side of the truck from Santini, who ordered them to stand still. Every time he moved toward their side of the truck to get them corralled, they would circle back around to the opposite side. The men started taunting Santini, laughing and calling him a fucking migra, roughly equivalent to a pig or a cop in English. One of the suspects decided to come around to Santini's side of the truck and face him up. At the same time, the other 4 males began to inch around the other side of the Bronco behind him. Santini reached for his collapsible steel baton and smashed the guy confronting him on the outside of his knee, as he had been trained to do, at the point of the peroneal nerve, dropping him. In the moment it took for him to reach for his baton and swing it, the 3 onlookers took off running in the dark. With the one guy down on the ground, cursing in pain and holding his leg, Santini drew his firearm and ordered the remaining one who had not run away with the others to get down on the ground. 2 out of 5 in custody, 3 on the lam, and backup on the way. With the situation somewhat under control, Santini could get a closer look at the face of the guy who had decided to test him. He had tattoos all over his neck and hands. Both his eyelids were tattooed. The left one said, "Fuck," the right one said, "Police." On the ground where Santini had dropped the thug, he spotted a 5-inch butterfly knife, its blade in the open position and ready for use, to gash him. It could have easily happened. He imagined the steel blade ripping his guts, bleeding him out in the dark terrain. Santini pulled into the visitors' parking lot and sat for a minute gazing at the prison's stone-arched entranceway. The place looked like a medieval castle erected alongside the banks of the American River, about 25 miles east of Sacramento. Built 140 years ago, Folsom was the second oldest prison in California, occupying the former site of a mining camp. After it opened in 1880 in the wake of the gold rush, with a design capacity of 1,800 inmates, the prison quickly became legendary for its harsh conditions. Inmates occupied stone cells that measured just 4 feet by 8. Santini had come to Folsom to talk with Diablito, one of the 20th Street homies who had been riding in the car with Happy on the day that VENMO was murdered 3 years before, when Happy opened fire on the busy Mission Street at the Norteños. Diablito was now doing time for an assault with a deadly weapon and was scheduled for release and deportation in 6 months. Recruiting and retaining MS-13 informants typically presented a maddening challenge, Santini had learned by now. Even gang members who wanted to get out of the life were constantly pulled back by the gravitational force of group loyalty. As a result, their behavior often seemed fickle and unpredictable, but it did make more sense when viewed through their eyes. To break free of the gang, an individual needed to abandon personal connections and deep loyalties that defined his self-image, leaving an uncertain psychological void in his place. Diego had recently and unexpectedly flaked out on Santini after providing so much valuable intel at considerable risk to his own life. He stopped answering all calls from Santini. When the agent went looking for him at the Crab Shack restaurant on Pier 26, where Diego was employed as a dishwasher, he discovered the informant had quit the job. He and his wife had moved out of the apartment with no forwarding address. Unable to track him down, HSI now officially labeled Diego as a fugitive. It had been a difficult decision. The downside for Santini was that he was losing on what had become an extremely valuable informant. However, HSI would be eliminating a public safety liability they had with Diego loose on the streets. Santini didn't think Diego would start back up gangbanging in the States, but there was always that chance. He had certainly proven he was capable of it previously in Honduras. Whatever the story with Diego, Santini wanted more intelligence on 20th Street's ongoing violent crimes, and to get it, he needed new sources inside the gang. Based on what the agent learned through his 2 main informants and SFPD gang task force partners, Cabrera and Gibson, he thought he might be able to flip Diablito. Waiting in the prison's main visiting room, Santini considered the vagaries of working potential informants. He could spend hours and hours, drive hundreds of miles back and forth from San Francisco to Folsom to try flipping Diablito just to hit a dead end. On the other hand, if he had just happened to get a hold of a criminal at the right moment for whatever reason, like with Casper, a half hour of prodding and cajoling might be enough to turn him. Santini was informed by prison administrators that Diablito seemed to be steering clear of other MS-13 gang members while behind bars. Unlike many prisons, it was possible for an acknowledged gang member to be housed away from his homies in Folsom, if that's what he wanted. Diablito was working in the prison kitchen and had avoided getting into trouble. The agent watched as the guards checked Diablito through the metal gates that led from the cell blocks into a separate wing where families, friends, and lawyers came to visit. The guards patted him down all over his denim prison uniform, then led him into the big visiting room with 30-foot-high vaulted ceilings, the floor filled with folding chairs, all lined up in rows as if ready for a high school prep rally. "You would like to stay in the U.S. with your woman and baby when you get out of here, right?" Santini said. "Yeah, sure," Diablito said. "So, what do you do for me?" "Look," Santini said, "I know you know who dropped that dude at the liquor store, referring to the murder of a member of 20th Street's rival Army Street gang, suspected to be committed by Psycho. I'm just asking you to tell me what you know, and I can see about getting you a good deal for you," the agent said. "Make it so you can stay in the country and get a good job and start a new life for your family." "What I gotta do for that?" Diablito said. "You need to tell me everything you know about the shooting at the liquor store for starters," Santini said. He could see that Diablito was maybe open to a deal, but he didn't want to push him too hard, too fast. "Hey, take a few days to think about it, and I'll come back next week, all right?" Santini said. "Yeah, I'll think about it," Diablito said. A week later, Santini returned, and Diablito told him he might be open to negotiate. On the other hand, Diablito said he was just as likely to keep his mouth shut and accept deportation when he was released in a matter of months. He hadn't visited his mother in a long time, and he was eager to see the old country again. Over the next several weeks, Santini was accompanied by Cabrera and Gibson on visits to Folsom. Based on their extensive knowledge of past crimes on the city streets, the SFPD gang cops peppered Diablito with questions about what he knew about specific violent incidents.